When I joined college, this was about 10, 12 years ago, I was very taken by my college campus. It was a 250-acre lush green campus, and I was very excited to enter. But by the time I got to the hostel, I was much less impressed. It was a 50-year-old building. It was almost broken. Almost 12 of us who stayed in a wing had to share a common bathroom. Water was almost never available in the bathroom. And even when the water was available, the geyser never worked. So we had a very tough time in the hostel. That was the story of how I did hostel when I was in college. Fortunately, students today don't need to go through that. Why? Well, it's really thanks to student housing companies. A lot of private businesses have been set up over the last 10 to 15 years who focus on giving a good quality living experience for students. A lot of these facilities have single rooms with attached bathrooms or shared rooms. They have a lot of space for common amenities. They organize a lot of cultural events for people to socialize and interact. Billions of dollars of private equity and real estate funds have been allocated to creating these assets, and hundreds of $1 million has been invested by venture capitalists into student housing operators, the people who essentially bring this ecosystem to life. The industry, which has been juggernauting over the last 10 years, has faced challenges over the last 6 months, primarily on account of COVID-19. There has been so much of uncertainty about students traveling from one country to another, like whether universities should be open by themselves. Also, online education has also played a very big role in helping grow this industry. Now, what's the future like for student housing companies? What's the future like for this entire industry? What are the regulatory policies which are governing this? How do student housing companies tackle this? These are all some of the questions that we're going to be answering today in this panel discussion with three eminent personalities from this industry. This is the panelists on what is the status quo. Right, we all know the last 6 months have been pretty challenging with respect to the industry, but we're more interested in the future. So where do things stand right now from the perspective of universities opening up their facilities with respect to new admissions and with respect to visas being granted for foreign students? Saurabh, maybe you can start the discussion by giving us an insight into what's happening in Europe and North America, and maybe Sam can help us understand the lay of the land in Southeast Asia and Australia potentially, and Karaman can give us an update from the Indian market as well. So Saurabh, you can take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Ajay. Say at least. And last 5 months, to be precise, were really challenging, unprecedented for everyone. But that shows how strong this industry and this asset class has been, right? Because this is a need-based product, and being into this is a live stage product to any student, right? If you need to study, you need accommodation, and if you're traveling, and with the Belgian increasing middle class, people are traveling. Border have definitely they got blurred. So I mean, and no one of us has ever experienced this. So if we say that we were ready, definitely we were not. But did we emerge stronger? Surely, we emerged stronger.
Sure. Okay. All right. So, Sam, any insights you can give us from Southeast Asia? Are the universities opening out? Is the government allowing foreign students, to come in yet?
At the moment, I think for Southeast Asia, I think many of the countries are still very skeptical. So I would say most of the borders are still closed. They're closed to practically everyone except their own citizens. Okay. I think take for example like South Korea. They used to be one of the top countries that were able to manage this, and recently there's a respike in terms of cases. So I think many countries, including Malaysia or even like Singapore or Thailand, I think they are very skeptical in terms of allowing foreigners coming in. And for example, like Malaysia, we are currently running in the 2-digit cases per day. But usually bulk of it, like 70 to 80% are imported cases. That means people coming back from other countries. That's why as of yesterday, like for example, Malaysia have decided to stop all countries that have 150,000 cases and above citizens to come into Malaysia. Oh. So I understand, I think like many countries in Asia or around the world, we cannot continue to close our borders. There will be a time where we need to reopen it. And I think it's a tough balance managing between welfare of citizens versus business. I think either way, there needs to be some management. I think take for
Are
example,
universities open?
so
Are universities open for domestic students?
currently, like in Malaysia, it's already open. It's already open since July. Starting October, they will allow 100% people to go back. Currently, they're running at 50%.
Okay.
But just talking to our partners in other countries, they are not able to get visas coming to Malaysia at this moment. The ministry have stopped all visa applications. So
Okay.
it's a matter of waiting. I think most of us in the industry understands that potentially, most likely, we are looking at the earliest is January next year.
Okay.
But in Australia, I understand.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So Karaman, can you help us understand what is the Indian government saying? When are universities likely to open up here?
Sure. So, I mean, student housing is a sub-segment in the real estate sector, yet the only asset class that doesn't behave in correlation to the real estate sector. It's educational real estate. The student housing always, still perform 99% occupancy, collections at 99%. But this time, it's obvious that, it's not pandemic proof. So the world,
Right.
came to a halt. And
Right.
obviously, everyone is feeling the pain. And yesterday, I think, as India, we crossed the 80,000 cases a day mark.
Right.
And it has become one of the hotspots. And, I'm just looking at some other emerging markets, which might kind of give an indication on the trajectory of the pandemic from Indian perspective. The population, I don't expect it to, open up 100% in the short term, even though there might be a motivation to open them up. Looking at what's happening in US, some states, some schools are opening, then, school of 1,000 kids, 25 people test positive, then they all go back into quarantine. So
Right.
I think, again, the pain is not over yet, but overall, we are very optimistic. The investor interest is still very robust. So I think, I don't think there are any fundamental problems, but rest of this year and, at least the first half of 2021 looks like it's going to be, the moving target. We have to watch and see what happens.
Fair enough. Okay. So quite a few points that you mentioned, which are very interesting, but I'm going to start with one of the more interesting points that I think Saurabh and I were discussing the other day offline, that, education as an industry during recessions has always looked up, right? Because when things are not really going your way, people start to educate themselves. So Saurabh, is that a similar trend that you're noticing right now? And are there any lessons that we can take from maybe a previous recession on, how the world behaves during recessions and pandemics, and how we see the next 6 to 12 months panning out from that?
Catering to, right? But as I've been talking, that this is unprecedented. So so as we are dealing education and real estate, and things are still okay, especially in our core regions, which is UK or UK, Ireland, a few other popular cities in Europe. But probably because students are, they know that this is a time to upgrade. There are not very lucrative jobs, right? Or probably all the economic activities, or there are so many business family backgrounds who want to upgrade their MBAs. So we see that trend, people going back to university classes, and especially undergrad, because they have 3 years to complete their education. And for postgrad, especially in Europe, most of the university went for blended approach, right? So they will be starting their, they are starting their session, and for this trimester they will be doing online. Probably in January they will be back. They will be flying back to these respective cities and universities, and join their campus, and start staying in this accommodation. So yes, certainly, there's a trend towards people going back to class.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so let me maybe bring up a point. Maybe for I think Karaman can take this. One of the points that you brought up earlier was that a lot of universities have already started courses but online, right? And this is in line with a much larger trend that's happening in the economy, where education is moving online. It's increasing access, for access to education for so many people. Now, the real question I think a lot of people are thinking is that, why should this only be a short-term phenomena during a pandemic? Why not even post-pandemic? Why shouldn't education especially university education, just be online. So what are your thoughts, A, on education moving online, and B, what is the likely impact of this on the student housing industry?
Sure. Great, very relevant point. And I think, at the moment we are in the midst of a technological revolution, and education sector is biting a big chunk out of that. But I mean, I just like, online education cannot replace on-campus holistic education, never. But what's I think going to happen is, so I don't know if you heard, New York University, NYU, just declared they're going to have classes and set up a campus from WeWork Shanghai.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's really interesting. So, I mean, thinking about that, imagine MIT, Harvard, Stanford opening up campuses here in WeWorks in Bangalore or in Shanghai or, wherever it might be. So suddenly what's happening is the top educational brands actually are able to give access to their quality programs to the masses. So I think, the way I see it going forward is that, these big educational brands partnering up with other big tech companies are going to roll out their programs to the masses. So, online, from a student housing perspective, I don't see any fundamental issues for established institutions. But however, tier 2, tier 3, up and coming educational institutions with ambitious plans, it looks like, they might have to relook at their plans. So with that in mind, student housing in those secondary, third tier segments might get affected. But when we look at it overall, for the providing accommodation for the existing student body is still a big necessity. I mean, in India, we have 36 million students in higher education, one of the highest densities in student population. So I think, there's a lot of room for growth. We still need to hit that mark until it gets affected. We still have a lot of catch up to do, but I think, it's changed.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think you're absolutely right when you say that online education is definitely going to penetrate a lot more than it has already. And in all honesty, like, this trend has been happening for many years, right? It's just something that's getting accelerated now. Yeah. Of course, there's going to be an impact on student housing, but the market size is very, very big that, players should not be disheartened. I think that's the crux of your message, which I think is very, very interesting. So Sam, I think Saurabh with universities, this is something new to me as well. So it's a very, very interesting insight. So thanks to both of you for, sharing this with us. So Sam, maybe a point that I'd love to hear from you, right, is that from the perspective of an operator, now, what do you do to your facilities to make sure that students do come back at some point, post-pandemic, which is something which is going to happen. It's only a question of when. It's not a question of if, right? So as an operator, what are some things that you're thinking about on how do you make your facilities more conducive for students, and how do you win back confidence of both students and their parents?
Good question there. For me, it's not so much the facility. I think for us, it has always been the way we do business, the way we portray ourselves being a truly home away from home. It's a service that we provide. I think at the end of the day, as we work with university partners, their number one priority is the same as the parents' number one priority. It's about safety, and they're able to let go in some way that they know that their kids are being taken care of. So I think many operators will look at it from a very physical standpoint, thinking of doing cleansing, doing disinfection. I think a lot of those are given. I think those are you must do given the new SOPs. But it's also providing the parents, that letting them knows that hey, it's okay to let your kids out here. It's part of growing up. And what are the services? What are people that we have that we're able to help them to integrate into this new life, and you're able to take care of them. If there's anything wrong, anything that requires someone immediate help, we are there to support them. So I think that the business models need to change to move towards more of the parental care, as we see.
Okay, all right. It's a fair point, right? I think safety has always been of paramount importance even before the pandemic, and I
Correct.
think that's definitely going to get elevated once we are, beyond this stage. But the point about safety, and I think one of the points that you've mentioned, which is, like ensuring that the facilities are much cleaner than they were before. And I think a lot of operators are now thinking about, should we even do two people in a room, and or should it simply be, like single rooms, so that people don't really share rooms anymore. The first thought that I got when I was hearing a lot of these diverse opinions was that, hey, all of this is going to cost money, right? Someone's going to have to pay for it. It's not free. Now, education is already expensive, tuition fees, books, and the whole lot. For a lot of people, moving to another country and studying in itself is inherently expensive. Student housing is also something which is expensive, right, as it is. Now, once again, we're going to add a factor of safety on top of this, and it's all going to, essentially, like, the cost has to be carried forward. So my question essentially, right, is that, do you think this is going to make things more expensive for the students eventually? Or do you think this is potentially a portion of the cost which is going to be levied to the property owners, and simply telling asset owners that, hey, you know what, the new reality in the world is that there's a much higher premium that we need to pay with respect to keeping facilities safe, and you're simply going to get lesser returns as an investor or as a landlord, and you simply have to bear the fee for this. So if I may ask, maybe Karaman can maybe get started with this. Who do you think is going to take the brunt of this expenditure?
So I think, I mean, sharing economy, we say student housing, co-living, we are not, nobody's doing out of joy or everybody wants to share. The reason behind it is affordability and
Yeah.
economics. And unless the affordability and the economics numbers change, I don't think it's going to reflect over here. So, we work with some of the best industrial designers out there. They designed the interiors of aircraft cabins as well. And they just rolled out a new concept for the new age economy class. The densification is the same. What's happened is it's just more panels, more privacy by utilizing furniture and things like that. So when we look at, our raw material is land, floor area ratio. I don't see de-densification happening in that sense, especially in city center locations. De-densification happening, obviously operational costs, on consumables or in some of the other materials that are used in operations, or overstaffing needs for housekeeping and stuff, they will increase. But from an operational perspective, it'll only be a few percentage points. I don't think it's going to be a substantial amount that will reflect on the prices. At least that's my point of view. I don't know if Shoaib and Sam would agree.
Anything to add, either Saurabh or Sam?
I think for me, it's a bit different. The way I look at it, it's actually an opportunity for operators to capitalize on this. You see, even before the pandemic, I think Karam mentioned it just then also. The trend has always been, because of the increasing affluence, people are able to be more, can afford more stuff. They are looking for single rooms, right? They don't want to share anymore. So what we've been doing also to cater for this trend, we've been kind of working with property developers, those one who wanted to build purpose-built student accommodation. We are looking at building smaller units. I think we're also seeing this in the property trend also. I think it works out very well for us. Even for existing property, in the past, let's say a particular unit has, let's say a 1,000 square feet unit has maybe 3 rooms. Now perhaps they can add in another room, or even a bigger room, add in another partition to make it into 2 rooms. So here you have a smaller room. You're able to charge a student much lesser, but because you have more rooms, denser per unit, you actually, the overall, quite easy maths to convince the asset owner to say that, hey, currently you're getting this amount, for example, let's say 3,000. If you add another room, you potentially get another 500, becomes 3,500. It's the cost of adding a partition, it's relatively cheap. Labor is cheap. Partition boards are really, really cheap. It's a way you can monetize it. So not necessarily a downside. I see it more of an upside for operators to look into.
It's a very good point. Like, I think there is definitely scope for operators to just repurpose their existing space. Maybe people don't need 200 to 50 square feet of space and put in two people. You might just have 100 square feet of space, much more compact rooms. But definitely, I think the world is moving in a direction which is going to enable that, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense. I actually